There is a disease spreading through the modern world that has no virus, no bacteria, and no visible symptoms. It does not show up on a blood test. It will not trigger an alarm on any medical scan. Your doctor will not diagnose it at your annual checkup. And yet, it is quietly dismantling your immune system, accelerating your cellular aging, inflaming your arteries, disrupting your sleep, and increasing your risk of early death by more than a quarter. It is not a new pathogen. It is not a dietary deficiency. It is loneliness. And your body is treating it exactly like a disease. This sounds like an exaggeration. It is not. Over the past 4 decades, a quiet revolution has been building inside medical research. Scientists studying the biological mechanisms of social isolation have uncovered something so counterintuitive, so uncomfortable, and so far outside the way we think about health that much of the mainstream world has not yet caught up with it. The finding, replicated across dozens of studies on hundreds of thousands of people across multiple countries and cultures, is this: chronic loneliness triggers a specific, measurable, and deeply destructive biological stress response inside your body. One that, if left unaddressed, functions almost identically to a chronic illness. To understand why your body does this, you need to understand a concept that researchers call the social baseline theory. Your body did not evolve to function alone. For the vast majority of the 200,000 years that anatomically modern humans have existed, survival was a collective project. You were born into a group. You ate with a group. You slept surrounded by a group. You defended yourself as a group. The human body calibrated every single one of its baseline physiological systems: its immune response, its hormonal output, its inflammatory signaling, its cardiovascular function, against the assumption that other humans would always be nearby. Connection was not a feature of human life. It was the operating condition under which every human biological system was designed to run. When that condition disappears, when the body finds itself chronically isolated, something remarkable and devastating happens. Your nervous system does not interpret your aloneness as a lifestyle choice or a temporary situation. It interprets it as a survival emergency, and it responds accordingly. Dr. Steve Cole, a genomics researcher at UCLA, spent years trying to understand exactly what happens inside human cells when a person experiences chronic loneliness. What he found was extraordinary. Loneliness does not just make you feel bad. It reaches down into the nucleus of your cells and changes which genes are turned on and which are turned off. Specifically, Dr. Cole discovered that chronic loneliness upregulates a cluster of genes associated with inflammation and immune activation, the same genes that switch on when your body is under attack from a pathogen, while simultaneously downregulating genes associated with antiviral defense. In other words, your lonely body prepares for wounds and bacterial infection, just as it would if you were living alone on a dangerous ancient savanna, while letting down its guard against viruses. The biological signature of loneliness, at the genetic level, looks almost identical to the biological signature of a body under chronic physical threat. This finding has a name. Dr. Cole called it the Conserved Transcriptional Response to Adversity, or CTRA. And it is not subtle. The CTRA associated with chronic loneliness produces elevated levels of inflammatory proteins called cytokines throughout the body. These cytokines, when chronically elevated, damage the lining of blood vessels, contribute to the buildup of arterial plaque, interfere with insulin sensitivity, and accelerate the progression of conditions like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers. Your body, trying to protect a person it believes is alone and endangered, ends up slowly destroying them from the inside. But the damage does not stop at the cellular level. Dr. John Cacioppo, who spent decades at the University of Chicago building the scientific foundation of what we now call social neuroscience, documented the full cascade of physiological consequences that chronic loneliness produces. Chronically lonely people have significantly elevated cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone. Even when they are not in any objectively stressful situation, their baseline cortisol is simply higher. And chronically elevated cortisol suppresses immune function, impairs memory consolidation, increases appetite for high-calorie foods, promotes abdominal fat storage, and damages the hippocampus, the region of the brain most critical for learning and emotional regulation. The sleep disruption is particularly alarming. Dr. Cacioppo's research showed that lonely individuals experience what he called micro-awakenings, dozens of brief, partial arousals from sleep per night that the individual is rarely conscious of, but which prevent them from reaching the deep, restorative stages of sleep that the body needs for tissue, repair, immune maintenance, and cognitive consolidation. A lonely person can sleep 8 full hours and wake up physiologically depleted because their ancient nervous system spent the entire night on threat alert, scanning for danger that living alone on the savannah would have made very real. The result is a chronic sleep debt that compounds every other biological vulnerability loneliness creates. And then there is the immune system itself. Dr. Lisa Jaremka at the University of Delaware conducted studies showing that lonely individuals mount a significantly weaker immune response to vaccines than socially connected individuals. Their bodies produce fewer antibodies. Their T cells are less responsive. They're natural killer cells. The immune system's frontline defenders against both infection and cancerous cell growth are measurably less active. You can give a lonely person and a connected person the same flu vaccine on the same day, and the lonely person's body will produce a substantially weaker protective response. Their immune system, suppressed by the chronic stress of isolation, simply cannot do its job as effectively. The cardiovascular consequences are equally severe. A landmark meta-analysis conducted by Dr. Julianne Holt-Lundstad at Brigham Young University synthesized data from 148 different studies covering more than 300,000 participants across multiple countries. Her analysis found that people with strong social relationships had a 50% greater likelihood of survival over the study periods compared to those who were socially isolated or lonely. 50%. That number rivals the survival benefit of quitting smoking. It exceeds the protective effect of exercise. It dwarfs the impact of obesity on longevity. Dr. Holt-Lundstad's conclusion was stark and unavoidable. Social isolation is a mortality risk factor of the same magnitude as the most serious physical health threats we already take seriously as a society. Yet we do not treat it that way. We build gyms and design nutrition labels and fund cancer research and run public health campaigns about the dangers of smoking. We do not run public health campaigns about loneliness. We do not screen for it at medical appointments. We do not treat it as the biological emergency it demonstrably is. We treat it as a personal problem, a social failure, a character flaw, something the lonely person should simply fix by trying harder to connect. This framing is not just unhelpful, it is medically illiterate. Because here is what makes chronic loneliness especially difficult to escape. It changes the brain in ways that make connection harder. Dr. Cassiopo's research revealed that chronically lonely people develop a hypervigilance to social threat. Their brains become exquisitely sensitive to any possible sign of rejection, hostility, or indifference from other people. They unconsciously interpret ambiguous social signals as negative. A neutral facial expression reads as disapproval. A delayed reply reads as rejection. A crowded social event reads as an arena of potential humiliation rather than an opportunity for connection. The lonely brain, shaped by months or years of isolation, begins to defend itself against the very thing it most needs. It pulls away from connection in order to avoid the pain of further rejection, and in doing so, deepens the isolation that is making it sick. This is not a moral failing. This is a neurological adaptation. The same ancient system that once kept isolated humans hyper-alert to threats on the savannah, because a person alone in the wilderness was genuinely surrounded by danger, is now misfiring in a modern social environment, turning ordinary interactions into perceived threats and making the path back to genuine connection feel treacherous. Understanding this mechanism is not an excuse for remaining isolated. It is a map that explains exactly why willpower alone is rarely enough to break the cycle. So what does break it? The research consistently points to one factor above all others: the perceived quality of connection, not the quantity. Dr. Cassiopo was emphatic about this throughout his career. Loneliness is not about being alone. It is about feeling alone. A person can be surrounded by family, colleagues, and acquaintances and experience profound loneliness if those relationships feel superficial, transactional, or unsafe. Conversely, a person with a small number of genuinely close, trusted relationships, people with whom they feel truly known and accepted, shows none of the biological markers of chronic loneliness, regardless of how many total social interactions they have. This distinction matters enormously in a world that has optimized social life for quantity and breadth at the expense of depth and safety. Social media platforms are designed to maximize the number of connections and interactions, not the quality of them. Modern urban life is structured around efficiency and productivity, not around the slow, vulnerable, mutually dependent processes through which genuine trust is built. The antidote to loneliness is not more contacts in your phone or more invitations accepted. It is the specific experience of being truly seen, accepted, and valued by at least one other person, and of offering that same quality of presence in return. Your body has been keeping score this whole time. Every hour of genuine connection, every relationship in which you feel safe enough to be honest, every moment in which another person's presence tells your nervous system that you are not alone in the dark. These are not luxuries or social bonuses. They are biological inputs that your body requires to function the way it was designed to function. Your immune system depends on them. Your cardiovascular system depends on them. Your sleep depends on them. Your cellular aging depends on them. Loneliness is not a feeling to push through or a mood to manage. It is your body sending you the same signal it has been sending humans for 200,000 years.